Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to AVPN's first South Asia Impact Capital Festival. I am Roshni Prakash, Products Director for Knowledge and Insights at AVPN. I am delighted to be your MC for this session. For those of you who do not know AVPN, we are a network of funders and resource providers with over 600 members across 32 markets. Our mission is to move more capital towards impact in Asia by providing social investors like yourselves opportunities to connect with key stakeholders across various sectors and markets, to learn from one another, and to find opportunities for action. Throughout this month, the festival will spotlight best practices and solutions that AVPN members are delivering across India, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. They will address issues ranging from healthcare, livelihoods, climate action, and education, all of which are of particular urgency for the sub-region today. Highlights will be shared live on Twitter, so please share your experience with us by using the hashtags AVPN South Asia 2021 and Social Impact. A few housekeeping announcements before we move on to the program. First, to download any session resources, please click on the download icon in the agenda page, which is beside the session title. To continue chatting with your speakers and fellow delegates in this session, please make full use of the messaging function or the event feed in the platform. Finally, please note that this session will be recorded and you will be able to access the recordings for 3 weeks after the festival. This week, the festival focuses on healthcare. As we have all seen, the current pandemic has hit vulnerable populations the hardest and exacerbated structural inequalities in society. Besides the obvious health implications for individuals, the global pandemic has exposed the weakness of the healthcare systems at large and uncovered many other systemic challenges that need to be addressed urgently. It is for this reason that AVPN puts the spotlight on healthcare in this first week. Today, we start with a fireside chat with Mr. Vishal Kumar, Lead Project Monitoring Group from Invest India. He will be discussing with AVPN Chief of Staff and Policy Advisor Patsin Loh how private sector capital can scale public sector projects through effective partnerships. Patsin, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Roshni, and a very good day to everybody that is online today. Very delighted to be here with Mr. Vishal Kumar to talk about this very important topic. So as a premise, I'd like to share with you very quickly that for more than a decade, we have all seen increasing private sector investment entering into multi-year nation-building activities in India. And Invest India, as a national investment promotion and facilitation agency, can bridge this gap very well between the government and private sector investors, particularly to usher in more sector-specific investments. During the pandemic, although we are seeing that collaboration between government and private sector have deepened in response, mobilizing capital of various forms, with the introduction of various schemes as well to invite other forms of capital to join in the response with the implications to follow the pandemic, we do see that private sector capital has much more room to maximize its impact potential. So to talk about how the private sector capital can navigate different opportunities to partner and scale sustainable development projects as a pathway to create impact and build resilience, Vishal, we're very delighted to have you here today to join us.
Thank you so much, Pat. Thank you so much, Roshni. And I'm excited to talk to you today.
Well, let's just dive right into it, Vishal. For quite some time now, private sector typically had been viewed only as an enrichment to the government funding that is available, not necessarily seen at first blush as being a catalyst or an enabler of socioeconomic growth. So in your observation from Invest India's perspective, tell us a little bit, how has that changed in recent years? And how do you think Invest India has played a role to facilitate that?
Thank you, Pat. That's a great question, and it's something we have been thinking a lot. So as you have explained, Invest India is a national investment promotion agency of the country. And while when we started, we were getting a lot of interest in the traditional sectors, I would say telecom and infrastructure, we did realize that to achieve our goals, SDG goals, India needs close to $565 billion every year. And this is a pre-pandemic number. Now, if a back of hand calculation can tell you that government of India, the tax revenue collections that we have, the borrowing ability that we have, or for that matter, in any developing country, we will need private sector involvement to build solutions and scale them so that our SDG goals are achieved. Now, once this realization came a couple of years back, since then we have seen that the interest from private sector investors have gone into sectors where traditionally money has not flown. So let's say public health, public education. Most of the capital that used to come to the country was into renewals or MFIs, microfinancial institutions. Once we started chatting with the investor, understanding what problems they are facing and then solving each of those problems, we have seen that the interest is increasing every year. So like I can tell you from one example, and we will discuss it in detail, but one of the things that the private sector capital investors used to tell us, that we don't know where these good investment opportunities in these non-traditional sectors are. And to solve that, we have built a online platform through which any investor sitting across the globe can evaluate projects across like all the sectors that are possible across geography, and you don't have to have a large scale deployment team to go and speak to the investors. We have more than 12,000 such projects on the portal, and that's one clear way I can show you. I can say that Invest India is helping private capital coming into non-traditional sector. Apart from that, we have another program called Agni, Accelerated Growth for New Innovations. It's a program with the Principal Scientific Advisor to Government of India's office, where we are identifying the new local innovative technologies and connecting them to private sector investors so that they can then invest money in that and scale those opportunities up. We also have a new program called Waste to Wealth, where we do realize that converting waste into wealth is one of the biggest priorities of this government. So that's a massive program through which we are identifying technologies which can be then taken to global investors, and this can be scaled up to solve the problem of waste to wealth.
I think it's remarkable when you think about the fact that what may historically be looked at as non-traditional investment sectors are actually such key areas of opportunity for us to really build resilience and create more impact from a social economic perspective as well. So the point that you mentioned earlier about the the online map in particular, I thought was interesting. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that. Is this an opportunity for impact and philanthropic capital to be also joining in this effort to move more capital to achieve sustainable development goals for India? Vishal, I'm afraid your microphone is still muted.
Okay, sorry. So yes, the platform is called India Investment Grid. It's a gateway to investments in the country, if I could call it. It's an interactive platform. Currently, over last couple of years, we have done extensive outreach and has gotten more than 12,000 plus investment opportunities that are currently live in the portal. The total value of this anticipated investment in these projects should be more than $1,900 plus billion. It can, so let's say I'm an investor I'm an investor for the Canadian pension fund sitting in Toronto, and I want to see what are the investment opportunities in different states in India. IIG is one platform where you can go, you can search for opportunities sector-wise, geography-wise, investment size-wise. We are also in the process of matching each of these opportunities to the SDG goals, and accordingly, depending on what is the risk appetite of the investor, what is their goal, what are their goals, what are their the sectors they are looking at. We are connecting, let's say, an investor who is sitting in a hinterland, in a village, or in a small district in some part of India. Somebody who's sitting in, let's say, Patna in Bihar can now connect with an investor in New York, and if they see value in engaging with each other, that's a discovery platform. That's how it's helping. And with the SDG mapping, I do see that the impact investors also would be able to leverage these platforms and find new opportunities. And in this, I would say not only IAG, but Agni and Waste to Wealth and Startup India, the other program that's being run by Invest India. This is, if these 4 units I combine, you will be having access to a really, really large bucket of investment opportunities. And I think that's a clear value add that we are providing to the investors.
How exciting that in one fell swoop, you have already spoken about 4 different ways that the Invest India initiatives are encouraging private sector capital, both from the impact as well as the commercial investment angles to look at these opportunities. I'm particularly interested about what you're talking. I'm particularly interested in what you mentioned about the India investment grid because of its engagement with different kinds of sustainable development areas. It sounds like it could be a very interesting one-stop shop. And I'll be curious to also hear from you about how different kinds of capital can mobilize this grid well. Maybe I could ask you, Vishal, to comment a little bit about which kinds of users will benefit the most from this. You mentioned earlier potentially development funders. You talked about investors. What is your view about other forms of impact capital providers like foundations or philanthropic organizations that may also be looking to mobilize their very mission-driven and impact-driven capital towards India? How do you see them using a tool like this?
That's a great question, Pat. In fact, I think philanthropic capital, especially in a country like India or other developing countries, have a such a critical role to play. And if I could just take a step back and say there are 3-4 ways in which they can, just drive this development going forward in next 10 years till 2030, the goals that we are chasing. One is definitely traditionally the way philanthropic capital has been, identifying geographies and regions where I would say the government does not have lacks the resources to deliver the services, and they have been going and filling in for public service, which ideally government should be doing. So I would say the philanthropic capital would continue to do that. But the bigger role is also how they can provide risk capital to do the research, to find new innovations, where the prices can be delivered, the services can be delivered at the price point at which the developing economy customer can buy them. I can give you a simple example of like in health tech or in ed tech, there are so many solutions that are currently being built, and these are mainly driven by venture capital. But impact investors can fund those opportunities where probably the profit margins are not that much, but those institutions are delivering services at the price point at which the people at the bottom of the pyramid can afford them. And that's how we, serve people who don't have that paying capacity. So second big part was providing that risk capital, piloting these initiatives, scaling them, and sometimes showing it to government that these can work is the biggest contribution you can make as a foundation. Yeah, I can go back to an example that while I was working with BCG in Rajasthan, EdTech in India was still like, and this was a pre-COVID world where traditionally we were still like skeptical how much EdTech will work in government schools, and we had foundations from UK who partnered with us. We ran a program with 12,000 kids. And once the learning outcome gains and everything was shown to the policymaker, suddenly we got the acceptance that yes, such programs can be scaled up. So this is my second clear value add that I see that the foundation can do. And third is also in a lot of areas, foundations may have to provide that what I call viability gap funding, that the innovation or the program that we are trying to implement may not be profitable on day one or economically sustainable, but to create that market, to reach that scale, for initial couple of years, the foundation money can be used to build that market. Or it's a well accepted thing called blended finance. And once the market gets created, then let the entrepreneur run with it. And So these are the three ways, clear ways in which I see philanthropic capital coming to the India. And again, with 1/6 of humanity living here and the kind of problems we have, I think we have a lot of problems to solve, but I don't see them as problems. Those are like big opportunities for development funders to solve. And as on a day-to-day when I interact with them, I see that energy and that passion that they have, that yes, India offers us that scale to solve it. And I would continue to see how we progress in these three areas.
That's really exciting to hear, Vishal, and frankly, very refreshing as well, because to have a promotion agency that largely engages investment capital to say that philanthropic capital can play these very critical roles is very encouraging. I'd like to now maybe shift the lens a little bit, because you talked a lot about many areas that opportunities for impact. So this is Health Week, as we had just introduced in the South Asia Impact Capital Festival. So we, of course, must discuss how the private sector impact capital can play a bigger role in building resilience during pandemic times. Applying what you've already seen from the investor map, the investment grid, as well as the other initiatives you just mentioned, what are your views about areas that would be most attractive for impact funders to consider? I mean, health sector is a very natural first thing that comes to mind, but please tell us a little bit more about that. And also, what other sectors do you think may also become strong opportunities for impact in the wake of the pandemic?
Absolutely. And there is always, I would say, a silver lining in dark clouds. So I think while the pandemic, when it started last year, did, and having seen the public healthcare services in the country, we were skeptical that India as a country, how will we deal with this? But I think in such situation, the country rallied around, everybody supported each other. And it also gave us a perspective to look at how important healthcare is. And so in last 1 year, some of the things, I think the way government has changed its policy. So there's a new production linked scheme that you must have heard about in pharmaceuticals industry. We were already before all of this happened, India used to be called the global pharmacy of the world. With so much of manufacturing capacity and the vaccine delivery capacity that we had. But now we have taken it to a new extent where we are offering production linked schemes to global manufacturers to come and build and manufacture medicines in the country. For the current vaccine production, you would know that not only we have started the vaccination drive in our country, but we have ramped up our capacity and now supplying to all our neighboring countries and as far as Brazil. In terms of, I would say that while this is again a very, I would say, interesting development, some of the areas where I think we will continue to see interest is in terms of healthcare delivery, because a lot of growth in India is now going to come from tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, villages, how the low cost hospital satellite centers are going to be developed. So that the last mile health delivery continues to get strengthened. That's where I see a big potential for the investors to invest in, I would say, companies that are providing low cost hospital centers. Also, I think the tech-enabled healthcare delivery has gotten a, I would say, big boost during the pandemic, like with digital teleconsultations, medical advice through VCs. All this, there is a government policy which has not only allowed for this, but also as an audience and as a medical practitioners, both sides have now gotten more acceptance to this. So that sector would continue to grow, if I may say. In terms of medical equipments and supplies, like I said, in PPE manufacturing, we just ramped up our capacity and we have shown it to the world that we can deliver. So in terms of even developing, I would say, medical devices at low cost. I remember there was a pacemaker that is being sold in the Western countries for $100. And in India, we were managed to, make that at less than of 10% of that cost. So sometimes these innovations would come in handy, and I continue to see a lot of interest in the affordable medical devices industry and biotechnology and pharmaceuticals. As I said, with production linked scheme coming in, new incentives for the investors, that's where I think India would continue to lead in coming years.
That's really exciting, Vishal, and I think quite clearly the healthcare sector has a lot more room here for more capital to come in and support what you mentioned earlier about healthcare delivery in the last mile and the medical and pharmaceutical areas as well, particularly low cost production and delivery. I'd like to then also pick your brains on something. We have heard in many quarters in many other parts of the world that the pandemic wasn't only a health crisis, but it also brought about other challenges in different sectors that are critical to development. So can you take a couple of minutes to talk about what else beyond the health sectors may be of interest for impact and other forms of capital that may want to come into India at this time?
Absolutely. So I think one sector where I definitely see a lot of actions happen in last 1 year is education. And I would focus probably on K-12, 1 to 12 public school education in the country. So if you know, in India, we have more than 100 million plus children going to these government schools. And before pandemic, we had different ICT programs running in the ICTs, information technology programs running in the schools, but we were still not having very proven scalable models of how edtech is going to help in improving learning level outcomes. And as I said, it was more of a function of having done a large scale study, shown that this can work or not. But during the pandemic, because of the the students, the parents, and the policymakers and the teachers. All four people are now seeing that edtech can play a big role. The new education policy that was launched last year definitely has provided a lot of momentum, where it has clearly laid out how edtech is going to be playing a critical role in the school education system in the country. The private sector capital that has flown in edtech industry in India, like you have company like Byju's, which is more than 10 billion valuation at this point of time. We have 2-3 edtech companies just running to a unicorn status within a month of 7 to 8 months. So given this huge scale of more than 100 million children in these governments, so the scale is just mind-boggling in India, and the ability to serve that, and with finally the acceptance coming from the key stakeholders in the education industry, I definitely say that we have seen some irreversible change. It's not that tomorrow, once the vaccination would happen, we would go back to a non-edtech world. I think it's here to stay now. People have seen the value, and with private capital coming in, new innovations being delivered every day. And especially, like you see, India is equipped for that. We have more than 450 plus internet subscriber users at this point of time. The data quality, the data access is one of the most affordable in the world. So with mobile phone penetration, data accessibility, and all of this is going to only get better from here on. I definitely see that edtech is going to continue to grow at a pace which will really make it one of the fastest growing sectors.
Indeed, indeed. And I think just the way you've described it, Vishal, mind-boggling is exactly the word, the phrase that pops in my mind, just in terms of the opportunity for impact. The need is great. The opportunity for technology and digital interventions, not only just in health, but also health-dependent areas like education and other important development areas are going to benefit from this kind of private sector engagement. So we've got 1 minute left. So I would like to ask you, Vishal, for just one last remark. In our audience, there is a wide diversity of participants, ranging from investors to philanthropic organizations. And I think today they are also providing a broad range of financial and non-financial capital that will benefit development. So what are your parting words to them on how to effectively and impactfully invest for impact in India?
Pat, I think my parting words would be India is at a point of inflection, especially as far as impact capital is concerned. Like there is acceptance among policymakers. Opportunity was always there. In last few years, we have seen successful exits, multiple successful exits, which has shown that it can work. There are investors who have gotten good returns at the same point of time, built very successful, innovative models. So now is the time where all, I would say, the teething issues have been taken care of to a large extent. The policymakers have started seeing the difference between a traditional risk capital of a venture capitalist versus the impact investors. They are willing to listen. We are there always to facilitate the investors. And I would say, just given the opportunity and the policy momentum, I would request all the investors to definitely, experience this ride, because in next couple of years we will see things which I think which will define the contours of impact investment industry. I was a trader and I had worked for a fund for 10 years during the subprime crisis. So I remember that no matter how markets would change, that was a very special phase. I am getting a similar feeling about India and the impact investment story at this point of time.
I think there's no better way for us to close this session, and that is a positive, upbeat note for what we can expect impact funders to support India in its growth in the future. So I want to thank you, Vishal, very much for your time today and your sharing with us as well. I'd like to turn the session over now to my colleague Roshni to take us to the next segment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed talking to you. Bye.
Thank you again, Patsion and Vishal, for that really engaging conversation. We have now come to the end of the fireside chat, leveraging private sector investment, bridging the demand-supply gap. This session was made possible with the support of our festival partners, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Sesame Workshop India, the Rockefeller Foundation, #COVID Action Lab, VNV Advisory Services LLP, the British Asian Trust, WPP India CSR Foundation, Catalyst Management Services Private Limited, and Sattva. To continue chatting with your speakers and fellow delegates in this session, please make full use of the messaging and meeting function on our festival platform. Do share your highlights of this session on social media, and remember to tag us using the hashtags AVPN South Asia 2021 and Social Impact. Up next is the session on digital health inclusion to achieve universal health coverage. This will be starting in just about 3 minutes' time. Thank you, and please enjoy the rest of the festival.